Beautiful. All right. Are you nervous?
A little bit.
This is all going to be edited, by the way. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Like what?
Whatever you would, if somebody said, tell me a bit about yourself, what would you say? I was born, I grew up.
You're gonna edit all this, right?
Everything's gonna be edited. But let's start again. Okay. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am 37, gonna be 37. Originally from Belgium. I've been here for almost 11 years. And
what brought you here?
I got married to a guy from Atlanta and came for a little vacation and decided to never leave. So I've been actually in Atlanta for 11 years. And I'm self-employed, I'm an accountant, and trying to start a business and struggling a little bit with that. And that's about it. I'm single. And yeah.
Okay. So tell me when you had your first idea that you had depression. Like the first time you might not even named it depression, but you knew something was up.
Well, looking back, if I look from now and I look back at my childhood and my teenage years, I'm now able to identify what would have been depression back then, but I would say, like, if I put myself at that age, probably the first time that it was really identified for me was as a teenager. Mm-hmm. So 13, 14, 15, something like that. I would say that was actually, my mom decided to send me to a therapist for the first time.
What happened that she did that? Did she come to you? Did you go to her?
She came to me, and I think the trigger was that I was spending a lot of time in bed, but which is something, at least back in Belgium, that most teenagers would do, but for her it was a problem. So I don't know that she saw me as depressed, but she just didn't like the fact that I was okay sleeping all day and not doing anything, and so there was part of that, and then she knew that there were things that I wanted to do and that I didn't do, mostly out of fear. So the conversation was like, it was actually her boss's wife who was a therapist, and it was like, why don't you go see her and see what's up? And at the time, I remember clearly I wanted to play a team sport, and there was just no way I was going to do it. Being basically too scared of everything, meeting people and having to find a team and all that stuff. So
which came first, the depression or the fear?
I'd say the depression. Like I was saying earlier, looking back now, I can see that I had been depressed or had symptoms for a very long time, and I call it depression now, but it can be a lot of different things, you know, like depression can be just a symptom of other stuff as well. And for me, a lot of it at the time as a child especially was loneliness, was how it showed up. I am a single child, and my parents, especially my mom, was overly protective, so I had very little freedom and little opportunity to do stuff, and I spent a lot of time by myself, being very introspective at a young age and reflecting on a lot of things, like even at 8, 9, 10 years old, like what is life about, watching my parents' life and be like, I'll never be like that, and that kind of thoughts. And at the same time, obviously at that age, not knowing how to not be that way. And so being stuck in like, whoa, I don't like life as it seems to be for grown-ups, but I don't know what's going to happen with me.
Right. Does it run in your family?
Depression?
Yeah. I just find it interesting that your mom came to you, and I'm wondering what that was, that she was aware of depression, she just, you know.
Obviously, it would be a good question for my mom now, which we never talked about, but I think more for her, it was like, I'm tired of you being in bed and being so unproductive. And
almost like she was making you wrong. She wasn't concerned of...
I would say, so. At least that was my experience back then. But
Right.
again, that would be an interesting question to ask her now. As far as my family, I would say yes, but not identified at all. So, like, nobody in my family ever went to see a doctor or was on medication or was literally diagnosed for anything. Um, but I would say my mom probably suffered from depression, but it was overcompensated by. In my family is a survivor family, and it's like it's all about making it and surviving, and there is no time to sit down and think about whether or not you're depressed.
Mm.
So, and then I watched my grandfather for many, many years just sitting in a chair all day, um, and like not interested in anything, not moving from that chair, and just complaining or talking about the people in the neighborhood or whatever, but like what I would definitely call depression big time, like no life.
When you were younger and you watched that, did it just seem normal, or did you know as a child that something's not right sitting in a chair all day long?
I knew it was not normal, but what that meant to me was I just hated my family overall. Like I remember my mom made me go to my grandparents every Sunday, and I hated going there because it was just this depressed atmosphere, really, and there was nothing happy, nothing ever. Like I don't remember scenes of joy in my family whatsoever.
Mm.
We had a few parties here and there, but the fun was brought by other people for the most part.
Right. And was there was probably a facade that went on when they were with other people, like that went on in the family, but when they were outside, was it different?
I think their closest friends like never saw my parents as happy people or at least fun people.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that they were kind of okay, normal to people in general, you know. But I remember distinctively like my mom, well, and my dad actually criticizing their friends for having fun or having too much to drink if they went out or
Right.
not being responsible, basically.
Right.
So my parents never allowed themselves to have any kind of fun.
So how did that affect you? You allow yourself to have fun?
I do now a lot actually, probably too much as a reaction,
Mm-hmm.
because there was a point where I would say it started the last year that I spent in Belgium was so I had moved out, I had bought a house, I was single, and it was a period of intense depression, but at the same time complete irresponsibility. Like I was going out every night, drinking every night, but then I would spend the whole day on my couch like what the hell am I doing, just hating everything.
So when you were out, you were able to turn that off?
Mm-hmm.
Was it there at all, or it was just gone?
It was kind of a fake thing, right? Like some people, at least in my experience, some depressed people just cannot bring any joy at all in their life. For me, like you give me a drink and you put me with friends and I'm able to turn off the depression for a minute and have fun. And so that's how it was. Like it would be while I was out and drinking and partying, I was fine and having fun, and then the minute I would get home, it was just like, oh my god, like in bed, like not doing anything. And I
Right.
wasn't employed at the time too, so it was just
that probably doesn't help much.
no.
Yeah.
And so to go back to your question of having fun, like that was the mixed part, and then I moved here and got married and was raising my stepkids and had to get on a career path. So there was not a lot of time for fun then, but after I left him, then it was just like, this is it. My life begins now. And it became all about fun.
Mm-hmm.
Which was fun, but probably also increased a little bit the feeling of depression, because it's like, what am I doing here?
Right. Right, like almost like a guilt.
Yep.
So how old were you when you first had your I'm gonna have fun and actually had fun? This is after you got divorced, right? Or you left your husband?
I would say so. I mean, I've always been like I could have times of fun, you know, I partied in college and that kind of stuff. Like, but there was always this underlying foundation of life sucks.
Hmm.
I suck, life sucks, working sucks, my parents suck. Like everything sucks except for when I'm out having fun with my friends.
So do you
I
think
would
you're...
say, sorry,
Okay.
I'm gonna actually take that back a little bit because a really fun period for me was I played volleyball for a few years from when I was about 15 to 18, 19. These were some of the best times for me, like being so engaged with different people in an activity that I loved and away from my parents and their power over me,
Hmm.
like was a total blast.
Right.
And it became almost an addiction. Like I lived for volleyball, and that's what I tend to do.
So you didn't have fun until you were older.
Mm-hmm.
And when you started having fun, was it weird? I would think that, you know, not having fun was the norm. And then all of a sudden you're doing something that you're not familiar with. What was it like?
It was a sense of freedom, I guess, like, and some rebellious thoughts too, like, yeah, I'm not like my parents. See, I can have total fun and I can be in the moment and just be silly and crazy and have fun.
Right. So your friends, the people that you hang out with, that you're not intimately familiar with, they probably have no idea that you deal with depression. Is that right?
Probably not. I would say that probably those people actually see me as a really fun person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you go home and everything's great. And
Yeah, because I can. It's rare that I have episodes where I cannot turn it off and I'm really like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go out. I don't want. So like, I'm usually able to have the two sides, and be like really depressed by myself and or with my close people.
Right.
And then have a day in bed and crying and being desperate and all that stuff, but then go out at night and have a total blast and seeing myself on pictures the next day like smiling like I'm the happiest person in the world.
So of those two people, the happy person out having a good time, and then the person crying in bed, which feels more normal?
Normal as in...
As in who you think you are.
That's a good question. I think it's really both. It's almost like I have two people in me. They both feel very real. They both feel like they've always been with me. They both feel as strong as one another.
Are they in communication with each other? Are they aware of each other? Or are they mutually exclusive?
I'd say they're probably separate,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing conscious about it. It's not like I go out and it's like, okay, time to put the happy face on. Like, not at all. Like, I'm truly happy when I'm having fun, and I'm truly depressed when I'm being depressed.
Right. Do you ever need to put on a happy smiley face? You don't. If you're depressed and you're out in public, you just are who you are at that moment.
It feels like it. Maybe I'm so used to faking it that now it seems normal, right? But it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel like I have to force myself, or very rarely.
Right.
I know people would say in my life that I'm never moody, for example. Like, very rarely, like, would I go somewhere or meet people or meet a client and people would say, wow, are you in a bad mood? Are you okay? Like, that's a question that I never get.
So, you're either happy or you're depressed most of the time, and then I'm assuming there has to be some sort of transition, some middle ground, where you're happy, and then you head down to depression, and then when you're depressed, you eventually come back up. Is that right?
Except that middle place is so fast and so... It's pretty much inexistent for me. Like, I go really low and then I go really high.
Mm-hmm.
And it can change so quickly.
What's quickly?
It can be sometimes in a matter of minutes. Like, because It's all based on exterior factors. That's the thing. Like my triggers are rarely within myself, and I think that's a cause of the depression as well because I have a very weak sense of self, and so it's like my happiness or lack thereof depends a lot on what's happening out there, other people's circumstances, and so like I can be miserable and then something happens that totally inspires me and I'll be on fire, and then vice versa. Something happens or somebody does something to me and I just go down.
Do you recognize it right away? Like somebody does something, let's just say it's pop a balloon. They pop the balloon and you know right off the bat that's your trigger?
Yes, because they're always the same triggers. Mm-hmm. And most of the triggers are around relationships. Mm-hmm. Relationships in general, like romantic relationships, friendships, people in my life, I give them a lot of power over myself. Mm-hmm. And so if any relationship goes sour for any reason, even for some stupid stuff, like somebody in a bad mood and doesn't give me what I need in the moment, and I'll flip.
Do you think that has any relation to the depression? Like one causing the other, or?
I think personally that my depression is just a symptom of other issues that I deal with, like codependency, hypersensitivity,
Do you feel that there's a chemical imbalance that you deal with, regardless of what your environment is, that you were born with?
I don't believe that. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pure belief. It's not based on anything. Mm-hmm. I've never been on medication or really under real treatment or even clinically depressed, diagnosed as clinically depressed. Mm-hmm. So it's all my own experience that has me say that, but I believe that for me it's very circumstantial.
So are you against medication and the medical end of it? Are you not against it? It's not the right word. It sounds like you don't necessarily believe that there's a chemical imbalance that could cause someone to be depressed. And
for me personally, not someone.
So you feel outside there are people that have a chemical imbalance, and a pill could actually help them get better. Mm-hmm. But you don't feel that's for you.
Nope, and I have a strong judgment around it, especially for myself, but still for other people too. I come from a culture where it's very different. Like, I found since I've been here that the American culture is very quick on taking a pill to fix anything. Mm-hmm. You want to lose weight, take a pill. You want to do this, take a pill. Whatever it is. And so I didn't grow up that way. And for me, and especially even more so in my family, it's like suffer through stuff. You have a headache, wait a couple of hours and see if it goes away by itself before you take a pill. So that plays a big role in my perspective on medication. And it's the same thing. Like it comes from that. I have this thing that maybe I could take a pill and feel better, mm-hmm. but it wouldn't be real for me. I'll have to work through my issues.
So let me ask you this: your parents, we talked a little bit about their lack of joy, and your mom came to you and realized there was something that she didn't like, you sitting in bed, not mm-hmm. necessarily that you're depressed, but she wanted that taken care of, and she sent you to therapy. Are you pro or anti-therapy?
Totally pro-therapy.
You're pro-therapy. Do you think that if your parents had done it differently, like they took you to a psychiatrist and got you on some meds first, then you went to therapy, do you think that would have been different for you?
Probably so, because it would already have given me a different perspective on the whole thing. Yeah. Because obviously you learn all that a lot, at least from your parents, and so it would mean that they would have a different perspective on it, which I would probably have inherited as well.
Right. Do your parents know you deal with depression?
Nope.
No, you never talked to them about it? Why?
Oh, we have very few intimate conversations. Um, and now that I'm so far away, like all my mom does is worry about me, and I don't want to add to that. I think she probably knows at least that I have those highs and lows, and but for the most part, since I've been here, it's always like it is what it is. You know, for me, when I talk to them, it's like they worry about me financially, they worry about the fact that I'm still single and all that stuff, and it's just, so I reassure them a lot.
Sure.
I feel like that's my role at this point.
Sure. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being suicidal, 10 being life is great, I'm in joy, where are your highs and lows?
1 to 10.
1 to 10?
And suicidal, like I have the thoughts. I'm convinced 100% that I would never act upon them.
Why is that?
I don't feel like I have. Well, it goes back to giving power to other people, right? Like I feel like it would destroy a few people in my life.
You're right.
And as silly as it sounds,
Yeah.
that is a huge barrier for me that I would never.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I would never go over that.
Right.
Like, and starting with my parents,
Right.
like I know that if I did anything, like it would literally kill my mom.
Sure.
And I can't deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and usually, like, I don't stay in those thoughts where it's even a consideration. It's like, it's more like, there's just no point to this stupid life, and I'm never gonna get better. And then I get into that despair mode where it's like, God, if I could just not wake up tomorrow morning, that'd be so great.
Like
But
if you went to bed and you didn't wake up,
yeah,
that would
there
be
are
perfectly
days
fine.
like where it would just be
Is that
so
a
perfect.
Is that a 1? Is that a 2? Is that a 3?
Let's put it on a 2 then,
2.
since I know I would not like literally take my life away. So.
Right. So 1 or 2 is where you're in bed and you're crying.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask about your I want to hear more about your 1, 2s, and 3s, but I want to go to your 10s first. Tell me about your 10s.
God, it's a state of anything's possible, anything's gonna work out. My life is awesome, my friends are awesome, I'm gonna find the perfect woman, everything is gonna be so great, I'm inspired, I'm gonna find my calling, I just, like being present in the moment, adding as much fun as I can to my life. And mostly for me, like a lot of my joy comes from being around people and the people that I love. So like a lot of that, like being grateful for the people that I have and that kind of thinking.
So when you go from, let's say 1 to 10, or 2 to 9, whatever, you're aware that you're going. You're aware that you're on your way, whether it's up or down.
Mm-hmm.
There's some sort of awareness. How do you reconcile when you're in 2 or 3? Reality is reality. Things suck. Your life is miserable,
Mm-hmm.
and that's real for you, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like for a fact that is the way it is, right? Or otherwise you wouldn't be there. When you're in 10 or 9, is it the same thing? You're looking around going, this is real. These friends are people that I love. I'm in a bar. I'm having a great time. I'm playing pool. My life is great.
For the most part, and there is just a little bit of background where, whoa, watch out, because you know that 2 is right around the corner, and you will go back there. Like I know my cycles.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, I have to say the cycles have changed a little bit. Like I haven't had a long period in bed in many years. I have days. I want to say maybe 2 or 3 times over the last 5 years I spent several days in bed. But like the last year that I was telling you about in Belgium, like that was literally a year of staying on the couch, like just no way out of it. That I don't know that I would ever go back there. You can never say never, but I feel like I've got such a support system and new tools and where I would be able to get out quicker and quicker. And that has been my experience. Like when it happens, I'm able to get out quicker and quicker.
How would you differentiate blues from depression?
I'd say that blues is like something that everybody goes through. I mean, the happiest people have days where they're not feeling so great. Depression is something that's not even understandable by people who don't suffer from it. It's impossible to explain, and I don't think that people can relate to it if they've never been through it. It's like there is that element of it's so real, it is so there, it's so dark. There's just no light, and you can have literally a million people next to you cheering you up, like it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. The light is there. This is what you need to do, and this is what I'm gonna do to help you. And you can't see anything. You just cannot. It's like that's it. That's your state right now. That's gonna be your state tomorrow, and nothing's gonna change it. It's so very irrational.
So the majority is going on in your head. The majority. Is there physical that you deal with as well when you're down?
For me personally, I'm not someone who is very in touch with my body. So it's always an effort. Like even if I go to therapy and say, well, what are the physical sensations? Or, I've done seminars or whatever where you have to look at that. It's very hard for me. Like what I experience in my body, which is also related to the depression, is the anxiety. That component of it. Like I can tell you that, if I'm close to having a panic attack, like I feel it. Mostly there and mostly there, right? But it's like the depression, the despair, like that doesn't have a lot of physical symptoms for me. It never, like when you look at the clinical symptoms out there, it's like lack of sleep, lack of appetite, whatever. I don't experience that. For me, it's 99% in my head. Really.
Do you clean yourself? Do you shower? Are you able to get out of bed? Change your clothes?
In those times of extreme, in bed crying, no. Unless really I have to, but I forfeit a lot in my life in those times. Like, some people are still remain functional. Like, if they have the job, they go to their job, no matter how depressed they are or whatever. Like, for me, it's like, done. If I have one of those days, I don't care if I have clients' appointments, I'll cancel them, so no, there won't be any showering and taking care of anything, or even less, my house or laundry or I don't know.
Right. When you're in bed, are you doing anything?
Thinking, crying, sleeping.
Do you have an appetite? Do you want to eat?
I guess it depends. Like,
do you have a sex drive?
I mean, a sex drive, as in if I'm in a relationship, being depressed is not going to prevent me from being sexually active.
Right.
But if I'm not going to look for a sex relationship in those moments either.
Tell me, so you're in bed. Give me an average time that you're in bed.
You mean over a period of time when you
have a depressed episode? What's the period of time that you're stuck in bed? Is it 5 hours, a week, a month?
These days, it's when it happens, it's just a few hours. I would say for the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't had really a long episode.
What's the longest you had is when you were younger?
Weeks at a time. Like, and obviously, I say that, but I would get up to eat or, whatever, like, but just like really so lethargic and not giving a damn about anything.
When you're crying, it's uncontrollable?
At times.
And when you're crying, is it different for you than when you're just depressed?
I would say that the intense depression pretty much automatically comes with crying. And then there's a difference, if you cry over, I mean, if somebody dies in your family, anybody is gonna cry. Like when it comes from depression, you're not even sure what you're crying about, other than this dark picture you have just painted for yourself. Like. And then there are so many emotions that get connected to that, because then it's like there's the guilt. It's like, what are you crying about? You have all this and you have that, and like for me, it's like you have all those friends and you're not living on the street or whatever, right? And it's like, so there's a guilt that comes with it, and you want to like kick yourself a little bit, but it does absolutely nothing.
Right.
And then there is obviously even the closest people and the people who love you the most, like, try to get you going, right, with encouragements, but you get angry at them because it's like, don't you understand? Like, if I could get out of bed, I would. If I could go to work, I would. Like, so there is that emotion as well. And then I was saying earlier, like, it's very irrational because, at least for me, there is no talking to myself. Like, in those moments, I'm not able to be like, hey, look, stay in bed for a couple of days, and you know that by Wednesday, everything will be okay again. Like, it's never going to be okay again in that moment. And that's what creates the madness around it for me. It's the clarity that it's never going to be okay again.
It's real. It's reality.
Totally.
And then at some point, you go from that point to the other point, and there's this. Tell me about the trip. Like, what's the travel like from those two places? Because, tell me about that.
It can be different. Like, it can be sometimes a little more gradual, where it's like, okay, I've been in bed for 3 days, and, I really need to go see that client, whatever, and it's okay, I'll go see just that one, and then seeing that one is like, well, I'm already dressed, so why don't I call so-and-so to see if they want to have coffee? And so that's the gradual process of it that takes me out. Or it can be like an opportunity comes up, like, I don't know, somebody calls to do something, and it sounds like so much fun, something that I want to do so bad. It's like, whoa, life is so awesome.
It just creates that spark, and boom, there you go. So what is the timeline typically, again, average, between as you go between the two extremes?
It's usually very short for me. And that's when I become rational again, looking back, it's just like, wow, like, this looks really crazy. Like,
well, there are people that would hear that and say, so you're over there, and that's reality, and then you're over here, and then that's reality, and they'd say that's crazy.
Yep.
When you get to the other side and you look back and go, well, that wasn't real. But then you'll be there again next week.
Yep. I tend to think less and less, I'd say, but pretty much my whole life I have felt like a crazy person. Mm-hmm. But then I've been in therapy, a few times, and I was never like truly diagnosed with anything. It seems like I don't fit in any one category, or I'm extreme enough to be diagnosed with something. Which is very interesting to me, because part of me would like to fit in a box and put a name on it and be like, okay, that's what I have. Just like people have diabetes, I would have some mental something. But that has never happened, and so...
So no one's ever diagnosed you as having depression?
Nope. I have some symptoms of this, some symptoms of that, a little bit of this, and a little bit of that, but I'm okay, apparently,
You're like a stew.
So, yeah. and I think, too, like, part of it is, and I've always been that way, but I am so in touch with those things, those feelings, those emotions, those states, and verbal about it, that I think a lot of the things that I suffer from are things that a lot of people suffer from. They just don't take the time or have the awareness or spend the energy on them like I do. I spend a lot of time analyzing and thinking. And
you did that since childhood. That's what you did as a child. Because you had the time to do it. Mm-hmm. And now when you're depressed and you're lying in bed, you have the time to do it again.
And even when I'm not depressed, like, it's amazing to me looking back at how many hours a day I spend thinking about myself and perspective and my feelings and why am I this way and why am I that way and what about this, and it's just like it's exhausting.
Not chatter.
It's crazy, like really, and so I think that's why like when you do that a lot, there's a point where you're gonna be like you're gonna identify some things about yourself, and most people don't do that. I guess I have the luxury of having time on my hands, but a lot of the time that other people put in other activities, I put it into thinking about that kind of stuff. Like an example is I don't watch TV at all. So I don't spend 3 hours a day watching TV. I probably spend those 3 hours thinking about myself, what's in my head, how to be a better person, how to deal with this and that, and just like strategizing a lot about it.
Is that on both sides, when you're joyful and when you're depressed?
Yeah.
Just constant?
Yeah.
What is your trigger? You have triggers to go down. You have triggers to go up. You said that, sometimes someone will call you and it sounds like so much fun you'll go. Are there any other triggers that you have that you know of that you might try to utilize to?
I would say that the main one for me, it's become pretty clear lately, is around relationships, romantic relationships. Like that's what takes me down and that's what lifts me up, like big time. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that I'm working out and trying to get away from, because a lot of my happiness is dependent on the quality or even the presence of a relationship or not. Like, if there is a girl in my life, I'm probably going to be super happy. Even if it's not great. Like,
as long as if it's there, it's good.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the quality is.
And then the second that something crappy happens about it, or there is nothing at all, it's such a trigger for me.
You just go straight down.
Oh, yeah.
And down hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What, are you embarrassed by your depression? Like you talk about, do you share it with potential spouses?
Why? I don't know that I don't. But I don't think that it comes from necessarily embarrassment. It's more like this. If I start seeing somebody, like I said, I'm going to be high. So there is no reason to talk about depression. They're not going to see me depressed.
Ever again, because you're in a relationship.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, like I said, it's not a mood thing. So it's not like I'm gonna be with somebody and I'm gonna wake up in the morning and I'm gonna be grumpy or whatever. Like it doesn't show up that way. It's depression. Yeah, actually, it's really more something that I experience when I'm alone. So there is no really. Most likely, the person who's gonna be with me is not gonna see me depressed.
Ever? Do you feel like ever?
Probably in a long-term relationship, they will at some point, right? But
So your stance is that when you get into a stable relationship, you're not going to deal with depression anymore.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.
And I live in a dream. That's a very good point, because I think a lot of my depression is the flip side of being a dreamer.
I don't understand.
What I mean by that is, I'm very idealistic, and especially around relationships. Like, I'm looking for the real thing, and love, and passion, and partnership, and I mean, even with friendships, and even in the world in general, like I have this thing. Hey, why can't we all be happy together? And so not having that, and not being able to create that even in my own life, no telling about the rest of the world, like my depression comes a lot from that too. Mm-hmm. Like not being able to have that dream. So that's what I meant by it, saying like I think a lot of my depression is the flip side of being a dreamer, because I'm a big time a dreamer when it comes to that stuff. So.
Right. So have like 6 questions swirling around in my head, and I'm not
Okay.
sure which one I want to ask next. Do you feel as if, well, let me ask you this. When you look at other people, can you tell that other people deal with depression? Can you spot them out? Can you see each other?
Not really. I mean, unless they, well, I'm not quick on putting the label depression on people.
Mhm.
I don't consider myself a depressed person. At all. I think I have glimpses of it and bits of it and symptoms of it, and when I go down, I know I go down really hard compared to most people, but overall, I would never call myself a depressed person.
Do you suffer from depression?
Even that, I'm not sure how to answer that. Like, have I experienced depression? Yep. Am I going to experience depression again? Yes. Am I somebody who suffers from depression? I don't know. Where's the line? Like, does it have to happen so often where you can call yourself that? Or does it have to be for a longer period? Like, I don't know, right? But
There's no blood, there's no test. You can't go to the doctor and draw some blood. And
right.
so the line is really wherever you say the line is.
I'm somebody who knows what depression is and who has experienced it and will.
When you're interacting with someone who has depression, they're open about it, and you're able to talk to them about it. How do you view them?
It's irritating to me.
Why is that?
And that's really like it's, and that's a side of me that I don't like. Like I really feel like an asshole about it, but it's just like, I guess, I mean, they say that what you can't stand in other people are things that you can't stand in yourself, right? So I think that's very true in this, because it's like, especially if I'm in a high, don't get me wrong, like I'll do anything I can to support somebody, but there's a point where it's like, whoa, you gotta do something here. Like, get out of bed, go do therapy, take pills, I don't know, whatever you gotta do.
The exact thing that you don't want someone doing to you, right? Right. That's mostly when you're high, when you're at your 10, and you're looking at other people. To explain irritated, is it irritated? Like, what is the word? You use the word irritated. What does that mean?
I think it's frustration, because deep down I know that there's nothing that can make a difference, and talking about it forever is not going to make a difference, because it doesn't make a difference for me. Like, like people can talk to me all day long and tell me it's going to be okay. Like, in that moment, I cannot believe it, and there's nothing that's going to make a difference.
So, do you look at those people as weak?
Nope.
Do you have compassion for them?
I do, and the part that irritates me is people who are not taking any steps when they are at least high. If that makes sense.
Oh, sure, yeah. When they have the ability, when you're stuck in bed, there's nothing you can do. You're stuck in bed.
Much, yeah.
But when you're up, there are things that you could be doing or you need to make up for when you were down. Is that what you're saying?
And kind of like at least have the perspective. Hey, I was down. I'm probably gonna go down again. I need to do something to work on those downs where I'm down, or at least when I'm down, or at least work on it when I'm high. Like, know that I have a structure in place to deal with it.
Do you do that?
Well, I've been in therapy for the last year, and I've stayed in even when I was really high, wanting to get out of it because I'm fine after all, since I'm high, but I think so. I think I have taken care of myself more than most people, and trying to gain insight and tools and understanding and creating a network support, and at the same time, like, knowing that, hey, when those days happen, they just happen. Like, those tools are not going to make a difference on that day. Nothing.
Do you think that people that don't suffer from depression, that have someone in their family or in their immediate circle look at them the same way you look at them?
I think I have an understanding that people who don't suffer from it don't have. And for me, like I remember early in my 20s, I had a really, really bad breakup, and I was down for a long time. And I mean, my parents just called me lazy, like, because I was not working, I was not getting out of bed and all that stuff. And so, as opposed to being recognized as depression or, even heartbroken or whatever you want to call it in those moments from my parents, it was just, get off your ass, like, go find a job, go
cheer up.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but no understanding that the very thought of having to go look for a job makes you want to kill yourself, like in those moments, right?
Right. So what would you, let's say that you were with a couple and one of the couple has severe depression or it's in their life, they deal with it. What would you say to the other half that doesn't deal with it? What would you say to them to, like, either educate them or help them to help their spouse?
My very first thing would be like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you can do this? Because there are going to be days where he or she is going to be in bed and it's going to make you really mad and there's nothing you can do. And you have to be prepared for that. As far as how, well, yeah, I think a lot of it is education. Compassion is a huge component, and not wanting to fix that person and get them going in the moment, is very important, I think. Like, but it's hard to find the line between just enabling them and be like, okay, if you need to be in bed for a week, be in bed for a week, right?
Just hang out for a while, that's fine.
And then at the same time realizing that your cheering is really not going to do anything.
Right.
So I think, again, like a lot of the conversations and the tools and the insight to gain, even as a couple, is in the times of highs. And that's hard for people because when you're on a high, you don't want to be thinking about your lows. It's like, you're fine. Again, it's very real for you. You're okay. Like, what are you talking about? That was last month. Like, why are we talking about this? Like, you don't want to go back to that. And even though, at least for aware people, you're probably going to go back there, that's not something you want to stay with your high, Same for the person in the relationship who doesn't suffer from it. It's like, why would you want to go mess up with that high? Hey, you had to go through hell a couple of weeks ago, you want to keep things the way they are. So I think it's really a pretty tough dynamic. I think understanding, knowing what it is, like through information and education, and then compassion is key to the relationship, but It's not easy.
What would you say to a young teenager, say a 13 or 14-year-old, that clearly dealing with depression, and you had an opportunity to sit and talk with them for a while? What would you say to them about it?
I would definitely, for me, the only thing that makes a little bit of a difference is the support system. And that doesn't always look like a bunch of cheerleaders. It can really be, I've spent some days on somebody else's couch. Somebody who has the understanding and the compassion that, hey, they can be there, but just be there. You know what I mean? So I would say to that person, build that up for yourself. Find a therapist. Make sure you have, if it's not a therapist, make sure you have people that you can actually talk to and interact with and that are going to be there for you. And then take a pill, I guess.
Are you American? Take a pill.
No, seriously, just... It's even for me, experiencing it, knowing what it's like, sometimes it's hard not to be a cheerleader. If that makes sense.
To someone
yes. So it's like, because when you love someone and you have compassion for someone, you want them to feel better, and and you don't really understand why your words or your offers to take them out or take them on vacation or who knows what is not making a difference. And so I think definitely professional help, talk therapy, and like if it's like I said, I do believe that for some people it is a chemical imbalance or something that you're born with or whatever, and medication can make a difference.
Why do you think that you're not chemically imbalanced? I mean, we talked a little bit about it earlier. That it might just be because your parents brought you to a therapist first, as opposed to a psychiatrist to dispense medication. But outside of that,
I think a big part of it is it has gotten so much better for me.
because what?
Like it has gotten so much better for me. Like, could the chemical imbalance go away? I don't know, or balance itself out. Like I don't know about that stuff, right? But it's like I do have that feeling and that experience that I can work through it without meds. And there's also a big fear for me where I have a very addictive personality, and I don't want to add yet another thing to be addicted to. And every time I don't feel good, how do I know? Like, then what am I going to tolerate and not tolerate? Am I going to have to take an extra pill just because I'm a little sad one day? Or, like,
right.
I'm scared of that for myself.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the difference is between you who, when you're at your 1 or 2, you wouldn't mind if you died, but you would never actually commit suicide because of the people that you leave behind? What do you think goes on in the world of someone who actually does?
I think they go even one more step lower, and personally I would imagine that a big difference is that network of people, that those friends, that family, like whether it's present or not. And then I think there might be, which I have not experienced obviously, but a point where there's no more self-control. Like, I've watched myself going very, very low, but yet having that ultimate sense that I still at least had power over that decision. Mm-hmm. Maybe for those people that's even gone. Well, not maybe, obviously it is, because they do it, but... And... like I can only speak personally, but for me there is really that element of guilt that would never let me do anything.
Right.
I guess some people don't have that.
If you were to choose one word to describe your depression when it's at its worst, what would the word be?
When it's at its worst?
When you're at your worst, when you're in bed crying and you can't get up.
It's the end of everything. It's just the end.
What's your relationship to your depression now? Do you have one?
It's like this thing that's part of me. Sometimes it's close, sometimes it's distant, sometimes it's just so there that I cannot even distinguish it from the rest of me. Most times it's just over there, and we say hey to each other, but we don't interact much more.
Do you fight it when you're on your way down?
No.
You just let it go?
I don't have the energy.
Oh, because you're just...
It just comes at me.
Right.
And
are there anything that you have tried that has worked for you more than anything else? To either prevent yourself or to prevent yourself from going down or get yourself back up?
I would say only the things that I have tried when I'm stable or high. So like making sure that I stay in therapy in those times. Reading stuff, like, because in the times of lows, there is not even a desire to get better. There is no drive. Like,
Right.
it's really, again, very weird, very irrational, very crazy looking, I'm sure, but it's just like, because there are things that I know that if I'm just a little down, I can listen to some good music, I can hang out with friends, I can even just take a shower sometimes, or take a nap. Like, those things will make me feel better if it's just a little bit of depression one day, right? But in the moments of really lows, it's like there is no drive to even attempt those things. Even if I know that they might or could or make me feel better, it's like...
Right.
No
Are there
way.
any benefits to depression?
Well, that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, I think that I'm going to speak for me, but I think that it's very general. Like, you're off the hook with life.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can expect anything from you.
Mm-hmm.
Who would? You're just crying in bed. It's like, so it's not, I mean, obviously and hopefully it's not a conscious thing, but that's definitely a big benefit. It's like in those times, like, nobody can expect anything from you.
Right. I actually saw somebody on a talk show the other day talking about how when they get kidney stones, which is supposedly one of the most painful things in the world, the first thing they think of is they get to take Demerol. And he's all excited because he gets to go home and take Demerol.
Yeah.
So I would assume it sounds like something like that, where it's, well, I'm going down, but at least I don't have to mow the lawn.
Except that it's not conscious. At least for me, like, really, it's not like...
Is it ever conscious? Do you ever use it as a tool? No.
No. Because I hate that state. Don't get me wrong. Like, it might get me a few days of not having to be responsible for anything, but God, I hate it. I mean, it's horrible. It's torturous. Because it is so real. Like, because you truly feel like it's never going to end. I mean, who'd want that? Like,
Why is it torturous? You're just lying in bed. What is torturous about
the
it?
thoughts and the feelings and the anxiety and the sadness and the despair and there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Like, it's just this, it's horrible. It's like the end of your life that you cannot even end. I cannot even end. It's it's even hard to describe, but it's awful. There is no words for it. It's just like, and you cannot really relate that experience to other people because for them it's like, what are you talking about? Like, tomorrow you'll be working and Friday you'll go out with your friends and you'll play tennis on Sunday and it's okay, it's just a day,
Yeah.
But to you it's not like that at all.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God, let me out of here. Like,
What's the cost? What's been the cost of you dealing with this throughout your life?
I've wasted a lot of time and there's still this underlying general thing of, that's life, that's all there is to it, that's, like, there's not really any point to anything. So there's almost this, like, lack of drive to go after the things that you really want or you really enjoy, because underneath that there is this, whatever.
Are there any steps that you think could be taken that you don't?
Well, meds would be one option.
Besides meds, because we talked about that.
I guess, like, have a structure for when those moments happen and, like, knowing what to do and how, but again, like, it would have, I think for me, it would have to apply that and actually get in action around it would require just integrity, like doing what you say we're going to do, but it's so out the window in those times. It's like,
Right.
because you just don't care. You feel like you're gonna die anyway, so you don't care. I
It
mean,
just doesn't matter.
so why am I gonna pull up my list and see, oh,
Yeah.
this is what I should be doing? It's like, what are you talking about, right? It's silly in those moments.
Yeah. What Why do you think that depression is so not talked about? Like, it's on television. You said, well, you don't watch television, but if you did, there's commercials very often for depression medication. Some of them are cartoons, literally, and then some of them are a woman or a man, and they just look pretty down. And that's it. Why is there no conversation about it?
I think it's embarrassing for a lot of people, and it still has that image of weak. Because, I mean, the message out there is everybody has problems, right? Like, get over yourself and deal with it. But what that message is missing is that depression is not necessarily caused by problems. It's more a state of mind, really, than, people rarely get depressed over something. They get blue, or they grieve, or, like the normal stuff, the normal, at least in a normal range of emotions. But I think there is something embarrassing and weak about being depressed, especially when you have a hard time explaining why you'd be depressed. A lot of times it's like, well, you have everything that you need or that you want, and there's I think, especially in this culture, there's a component of laziness too. Like, depressed people look very lazy.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants that, obviously, and it's hard to fight. Like, I've asked myself at times, maybe I'm just freaking lazy. Like, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not depression. I'm just.
Or the laziness causes the depression, and it's never going to stop because I'm lazy.
Yep.
Right. Why are you able to sit in front of cameras and be videotaped having a conversation about depression, as opposed to Joe over there who won't even go seek help?
Well, I think a lot of people, to begin with, don't recognize depression in themselves. It's not even the embarrassment or whatever that comes only afterwards once it's identified. But we live in a culture where it's go to work, come home, take care of your kids, go have fun, do stuff, right? And so there is not a lot of opportunity to be introspective or to look at those feelings. And then I think personally, I see it every day. I see a lot of people who go through life totally unhappy, but never take a second to look at not only what's causing it, but also how they could get out of that.
And perhaps they're not even aware.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think, like I said, I have done a lot of work on myself where I feel very aware. It doesn't mean that obviously I don't have it all figured out. Far from that, but at least there is an awareness, and then with that, I believe comes vulnerability. It's like, what do I care? That's just something that's there for me at times, and you know what I mean? So I don't have the embarrassment. I say that, and at the same time, I don't know that I would like to be perceived as a depressed person, by society at large, or by a boss, or by a potential spouse, like you were saying. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would like to have that label, but so I'm comfortable, like, knowing that that's something that I suffer from at times, and at times not.
Mm-hmm.
Not depressed 365 days a year, so.
Do you think it's helpful that you're able to talk about it with other people and be fairly open about it?
Well, I think it definitely creates something in the relationship. Like, I believe that being open and being able to talk about anything creates stronger bonds. But as far as the depression itself, I don't think so, because again, in those moments, it's
Right. Right. Why did you agree to do this?
I think the main reason is just I believe a lot in people sharing their experience and other people getting something from that. So if that can make a difference that way, why not? And yeah, then again, because I have nothing to hide or nothing that I wouldn't want to talk about, I know not everybody is that way, so if I can be of service that way.
Right. Awesome. Well, I love this. What, is there anything that I missed that you want to throw out? That you're like, hey, we didn't talk about, or?
No, not really. There is like a part of me that wishes that I could express what it's like in words better.
Mhm.
But I just realized talking about it that it's just really not possible. It's just it's just really not. Like there's almost no words for it.
Right.
So
We'd have to create one.
probably.
Let's do that.